how can I scale within 6 months to a year, and where could I be to where I am today? So, the first thing that I wanted to do was really understand the business. So I always go back to COVID, because to me, that was my learning year. And then the following year after that was my implementation year. So the first year was all educational for me, just really trying to understand, put together a plan of how can I learn as much as I can about the industry. But aside from learning, a lot of it is trying to implement. You can learn as much as you can, but if you don't implement, you're never really going to pursue or grow.
Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Ernest Peralta has combined his passion for multifamily investment, management consulting, and personal development with his personal philosophy of goal setting, envisioning, and manifesting success to help people who want to live their best life. Ernest, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Hey, man, the pleasure's mine. There's 3 questions I ask every guest who comes on the show. Can you tell us in 90 seconds or less, where did you start? Where are you now? And how did you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started about 12 years ago. My background entails management consulting, but my family had a small portfolio of residential real estate. And so that's kind of how I got my start, was kind of through my family. And over the years, I basically had always, had real estate in the back of my mind, but I took the route of consulting because I had finished my undergraduate degree, my master's degree, kind of did the whole educational thing, worked in corporate arena for, several years. And long story short is that I ended up stumbling into commercial real estate right before COVID, and tried to find out what asset classes or what areas could actually help me sustain if anything was to come again like this to impact me and my family in the future. And I came across commercial real estate, and that's where I am today.
Tell me real quick. I mean, the term corporate consultant for somebody that has no experience in the corporate world doesn't mean much to me. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always a confusing thing when you say corporate consulting or management consulting. It's like, what is that? Right. So what it is basically is I provide advisory services, whether it's project program management for Fortune 500 companies. So you name the big retailers I've consulted for, companies like, and I'll say this here, like Microsoft, AT&T, Costco, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, all of their companies. Basically, I come in and I provide strategic type of guidance, whether it's pushing an initiative, a business initiative that they have, a new application or software. Sometimes it could be data privacy or security type of issues. These are things that I help them either document, work with a team. It's usually a global team that I work with, and we have timelines and processes that I typically kind of project manage until delivery of these products.
And is that something you're still involved in today, or have you switched completely to commercial real estate?
I did. Yeah, I actually had switched over about a year now. Okay. And so I ended up making that switch over. I spent about a good 16 plus years in that arena. And I decided, I mentioned earlier before jumping on, COVID actually had impacted me. So this is where that pivotal moment for me actually happened, is when I decided to look back into commercial real estate, since I had done, residential real estate many years ago. And so that was my pivotal moment. And this is where my focus is right now.
What was your strategy? I know, jumping into commercial real estate just before COVID probably had to be a little bit unnerving, but what was your strategy? Once you said, okay, I'm stepping out of the out of the corporate consulting role, what did you do to get involved in commercial real estate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great question, Sam. I think for me, one of the things that I always like to do is I like to strategize, like, okay, I don't know too much about commercial real estate. Where do I start? So the first thing I ended up doing was trying to find individuals out there that actually could help me as a mentor, or maybe I could take courses. So I did a lot of, research online, and I came across a couple of individuals, like the Michael Blancs of the world, the Peter Harrises and the Dylan Borlands. Those individuals were folks that I had actually looked at, researched prior to me jumping on board and, really dedicating myself into commercial real estate. So that was number one, was trying to find experts in the industry. Secondly, I networked with people, at that time, a lot of Zoom calls. So a lot of interactivity, in the social media realm, if you will. So I did a lot of connections through LinkedIn, social media with individuals that already had experience in commercial real estate. Now, at the time, I was really trying to focus on, okay, what aspect of commercial real estate do I want to focus in? Because there were various different asset classes. I realized at the time that, multifamily, mobile homes, as well as, different types of retail could potentially be lucrative, in times of turbulent, recessions, if you will, that happen in our economy. So I ended up just focusing on multifamily for the fact that it was kind of a segue for my family and I when we had owned a couple of duplexes in the past. So for me, that was kind of a no-brainer to kind of step into that arena. That had became my focus, going forward. So kind of to where we are today, I ended up just really networking very, very well with individuals that are in the industry, tried to learn what it was to be like as a limited partner. What is a co-GP? What is a GP? And also, how do you equity raise? All those things kind of came into play for me to really understand, okay, what aspect of this business do I want to focus in? And, how do I get involved? So that was basically my start.
Man, I love it. I bet from the corporate consulting side, you did a lot of strategy and planning. So what did you do? Find the experts, network on social media. Did you lay out like a 10-step plan and said, okay, I'm going to do this first, and I'm going to do this, and here's how I'm going to raise equity? I mean, what did that blueprint look like if you had one? And I'm sure you probably did.
I did. Yeah. I created an Excel file. Basically, I used a Microsoft Excel document, or basically it was Microsoft. And I pulled up my document, created a project plan, if you will. Basically, it was my steps to how can I scale within 6 months to a year, and where could I be to where I am today? So, the first thing that I wanted to do was really understand the business. So I always go back to COVID, because to me, that was my learning year. And then the following year after that was my implementation year. So the first year was all educational for me, just really trying to understand, put together a plan of how can I learn as much as I can about the industry. But aside from learning, a lot of it is trying to implement. You can learn as much as you can, but if you don't implement, you're never really going to pursue or grow. So about 4 months into it, after I put my plan together, my whole intent was to have a 90-day plan. And so, that's kind of what I got. It was kind of the theme after, networking with various folks, that within 90 days, I should definitely try to, go out there and start making some deals. So that's what I ended up doing. So one of my plans of action was learn as much as I could, and then also start reaching out to potential investors, whether it was, through mailers, just cold calling, and really trying to get exposure in that sense. So that was basically my first 90 days to, I would say, 4 to 5 months of just doing that. And then also trying to make offers. So I would get on these conference calls or mastermind group calls with, my group, and basically talk about these different scenarios and go through, different ways of how we're approaching it. If we did get a deal, how would we evaluate and analyze it? So there was a lot of brainstorming and just working with individuals that, I team up with to really understand the business as much as I could. One thing that I'd like to say is that there is a really good underwriting course that I actually, it's more of a conference call, but it's an underwriting conference call that I attended, on a weekly basis for almost a couple of months. And this gentleman, I can name him here in a little bit, but he is exceptional. And I would say that he was kind of the foundation of me actually really trying to understand the underwriting process and everything for multifamily.
That is really, I love the multi step, approach. Hey, we're going to line this out and then we're going to go do it. I guess, you've brought up a few questions I have along the way. I mean, you talked about mastermind group calls. I mean, that's something that a lot of people like the idea of, but even just selecting a mastermind can take an enormous amount of time, and going, gosh, especially if you're new to the industry, it's like, there's how many? 1,000 masterminds you could possibly pick from. There is, 1,000 ways you can reach out to investors. I guess, it sounds like you broke this down on a very granular level. Like, how did you even go about selecting? Let's just start there with your mastermind.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was mainly geographic. I looked at folks that were geographically located to where or an area that I wanted to invest in. For me, one of the lucrative areas outside of the state of Washington is kind of the Southwest, if you will, and the Midwest. So I tried to find mastermind groups that kind of focused in those areas. And, just through social interaction, just meeting them online, that's how I developed, a lot of the relationships. So a lot of it also was based on building relationships, folks that I just connected with right away. I think that's very key. And just developing that trust factor. As you know, when you invest in real estate, you just want to make sure that you align yourself with the right people, the people that probably have done at least a few deals under their belt. So they've got a track record that, is good. At the same time, you want to be able to talk to these individuals and to just be open with them. So I think having that connection and that connectivity, as well as, a history of success would be ideal.
Right. No, that's really cool. Tell us the conference call you were on for underwriting. I think that's a valuable tool and resource that our listeners may really appreciate.
Oh, yeah. So, gentleman's name is Charles Seaman, and he is incredible. He as of this call, I believe he's still doing it every Saturdays.
That's right.
So, if that's something that your audience members or folks that are listening here on the conference call want to attend, I would say reach out to Sam or myself and be happy to connect you to him. But I would say he's ideal.
And certainly Charles has come on the show. Gosh, it's been maybe a year and a half ago. So you can go to our website at bricketinvestmentgroup.com/podcast and just type in Charles Seaman, SEAMEN, say SEAMAN, if I can spell today. Sure. Look up Charles Seaman and you can find their information there right on our website, and you can probably attend that conference call. So there's a great tool and resource. Thank you for sharing that, Ernest. I'd actually forgotten that. Tell me, is there been any bad advice that you were given along the way that you either implemented or immediately knew it was bad advice?
Bad advice. I would say, you hear this a lot. It's like, find your passion. And I believe that to some extent. Passion, I think, is something that is relatively gets you moving, gets you motivated, but I think it's short term. To me, by following my passion, I've done numerous things prior to getting into commercial real estate. But I think one of the main things that I would say would be better advice is to not only, follow your passion, but work on your daily plan. Work on those things that you don't want to do on a daily basis, because those are things that you actually need to do in order for you to accomplish your goals. I think that, to me, is an advice to where if I were to flip that, I would say work on things that you don't want to do that you need to accomplish, what you want in life. If it's, commercial real estate, you have to put in the work, you have to put in the grind, making your daily calls, working your action plan. Passion comes out of doing that for a number of days until it becomes a habit. Then it becomes a passion, because you're going to end up liking some of the things that you do, whether it's the grind or it's going to be talking to people or putting a deal together. I think that, to me, is probably one of the most misconceptions that I hear. And I think that if you kind of flip that around a little bit, I think it would be better advice. That's from my perspective, at least.
No, I think that's great. I mean, it's always a blend there, right? There's like hey, you got to get your reps in. Right. Yeah. If you want to stay fit, it doesn't matter if like I read that on the workout plan for yesterday, and it was something like, hey, you know what? Maybe you don't love today's workout, but it's a matter of showing up and doing the work, and then you'll get the results you want. Yeah. Do you love it every day? Maybe not. But I think there's a blend there of like finding what your skill set is and what really, you can bring value to the table. How can you bring value to the table, but also going, hey, what is it? At times, do you just have to say, I just got to get through this. So it's a nice, but I like the idea of, maybe not necessarily following your passion, but following your plan at first. And then, your passion will certainly come out of that. What does your portfolio look like today?
Yeah. So portfolio today, we own over 600, units. It spans across the Southwest. I'm basically an LP, a GP, co-GP, and a capital raiser for these assets. They're mainly multifamily. They're Class B and Cs. We typically look at a little bit of capital improvement. We don't come in and do huge renovations, but something to where we can come in and do some potential upside, whether it's mainly raising rents or just adding different things to the property itself. And for us, that's been kind of our stronghold and kind of our focus for now.
Gotcha. That's really awesome. Tell me, you mentioned this earlier in the show where you said that you were reaching out to investors before you'd ever had a deal. Like,
Yeah.
walk us through that conversation, because, for me, I would think that would be a hard conversation of like, hey, I'm planning on getting into this, but I don't have a track record. How'd you overcome that?
Yeah. Well, for me, I always try to reach out to folks that have the experience, and whether it's whether you're a VP, SVP, or an investor, in any situation, I'll definitely go to you because you have the knowledge. So me going out to an investor, my whole plan of action there was basically to reach out to them to say, hey, I understand that you own a few properties. I'm kind of getting into the industry. Do you have any best practices or anything that you could provide me in terms of how did you get your education? How did you get your start? That was basically my segue. And most people are very cordial. Those that have, as you probably know, Sam, those that have success or have tremendous success, they're willing to help for the most part, and provide you advice. So to me, that was my segue because, you never know what opportunities come out that way. And that was kind of the way I started.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely great. Ernest, tell me, what's one of the biggest challenges, now that you've kind of gotten I'm going to call it your feet wet. Obviously, you're firmly in the business now. You've kind of developed your plan, you've implemented part of it. What are some challenges that you face scaling from this point going forward?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one of the challenges that we have right now is that it's definitely a seller's market for the most part. So I think there's a lot of individuals now. I think over just even a couple of years now, there's a lot of individuals such as myself that have done corporate work and are now starting to look into investing. So I think there's an influx of this kind of group now that's getting into the industry. So it's challenging. It's more challenging. At the same time, you have a lot of savvy investors now. A lot of these individuals are smart. They know how to come in, underwrite, and so they're making it fierce in that sense. Mm-hmm. I think in combination with, a lot of folks coming now into this arena because they understand that it's a great niche to be in for longevity. But at the same time, I think the investors also have the certain mindset of what they think their price is for their assets. They're thinking 6 months ago that the price is still, relevant today. So they're asking for, a pretty hefty price on their assets. So it's a challenge there. It's a double-edged sword. You want to make it work, but at the same time, you wanted to be able to get the property and also make it lucrative for your investors as well. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I see.
Yeah, and I think as we see, who knows where interest rates, for those of you who are listening to this, this is being recorded on May 12th of 2022. So, we don't know right now where interest rates are going, what effect that's going to have on on a cooling. Are we going to see a continued rise in especially in multifamily, in rent increases, things like that. And so when you say 6 months ago, I wonder, just because it is fierce and it is competitive, though, are we seeing a tapering in the prices in multifamily, or at least a leveling off, or is it that people are still looking, for that, kind of almost vertical trajectory in sales price? Yeah.
Well, one thing is that I notice is that a lot of the investors are holding firm on, what they believe their property is worth at this point. And so I think for right now, I know inflation I think it slowed down a little bit last month from what I read, but it's very, very minimal. It's probably not too impactful at this point, but for the most part, I think a lot of investors are still holding on. They're still holding firm. I don't think they're going to budge anytime soon, but at the same time, I think investors are willing to pay, what they're asking. Right. So I think you really have to underwrite, look at the market. And when you're doing your deals, just really make sure that, you're coming to the table with something that's worthwhile, and you're not just paying just to pay, and I think that's kind of the challenge right now for us. I think we're taking the standpoint of, we're going to hold on to our portfolio for now, but we're definitely, looking at properties on the daily basis. We're just underwriting, and, if there's a good deal, then we'll definitely pursue it. But for right now, I think a lot of it is just kind of looking at the way that things are going right now in the market, and just evaluating things as we move along. We'll see what happens here in the next 6 months, though.
Right. Like they say, time will tell. Last question for you is this: 10-year plan. Where do you want to be in 10 years?
Well, yeah, in 10 years, we'd like to have at least close to 50 million in assets, if not more. What we'd like to do eventually is look at other asset classes. Right now, as I mentioned, we have a multifamily portfolio, but it would be nice to diversify that, potentially get into mobile home parks or maybe into storage facilities too as well. Those are other, asset classes that we want to get into. But I think over time, that will definitely happen. But for right now, our focus is on multifamily. It's a great area for us to focus our efforts in. But that's our 10-year plan.
I love it. I love it. Ernest, thanks for taking the time to come on the show today and really break down your business and tell us your awesome story. I love the precision with which you have enacted your plan and even putting the plan together. There's some people that just lack that out of the gate. So some great tips, some great tools. Appreciate it. If our listeners want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best way is you can look me up on LinkedIn. You could also reach out to me at mvpequitygroup.com. That's basically our private equity company. And you could just reach out to me also at ernest@mvpequitygroup.com.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Ernest. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.